So here we are, 7 days after this assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and they put out this piece of evidence that, by the way, begs for copycats. This guy is actually offering money for copycats. The Justice Department is trying to keep the would-be Trump assassin behind bars, and they did a court filing that includes evidence as to why he is a danger to society. And it's this letter, this handwritten letter, allegedly from the would-be assassin, Mr. Routh. Now, I say allegedly because, well, it seems as though we don't know for sure if this really was from him, which begs the question, why are they releasing this unless they verified this was from him? And they may have, I don't know, but it's certainly not in the Justice Department's filing. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's take a look at what this letter says because, well, it's a little scary. Here, we'll read it together. Dear world. Wow, he thinks the whole world is reading his letter. What a megalomaniac. Dear world, this was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I am so sorry I failed you. I tried my best and gave it all the gumption I could muster. It's up to you now to finish the job, and I will offer $150,000 to whomever can complete the job. Everyone across the globe, from the youngest to the oldest, know that Trump is unfit to be anything, much less a U.S. president. U.S. presidents must, at bare minimum, embody the moral fabric that is America and be kind, caring, and selfless, and always stand up for humanity. Trump fails to understand any of, and then we don't have any more of this. So it's been noted pretty quickly by many observers here in terms of law enforcement's typical standard protocols in situations like high-profile violent acts or attempted violent acts, that when the killer or would-be killer has a manifesto of sorts, they try to keep those things under real close, tight watch, right? They don't want to release it. It's like pulling teeth to get them to release a manifesto so the American people can actually have full transparency to know what the motives may have been behind the violent act. In fact, what we just finally got the release of the Covenant Christian School murderer in Tennessee. This is the transgender individual who went on a shooting spree against Christians in a school. There were suggestions that this was trans-motivated violence against Christians, but it took forever for law enforcement to finally release that thing. And their argument was, well, we don't want to do this because we don't want any copycats, right? How many times does a would-be assassin or someone who actually does a school shooting or some sort of violent act for public, political, or social reasons get their social media accounts completely deleted, right? They're censored. The Twitter account is protected immediately. The Facebook page is deleted. Again, because they want to protect us. They want to protect the American people from seeing what was actually behind the violent act that we just witnessed and that has, been plastered across news media for days and weeks and months on end. And they always say, well, we don't want copycats. We don't want copycats. We don't want copycats. So here we are, 7 days after this assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and they put out this piece of evidence that, by the way, begs for copycats. This guy is actually offering money for copycats. What the hell is wrong with the Justice Department here? Or at least have one standard, not this double standard. I, for one, frankly, am excited that we finally have a Justice Department who's interested in transparency and not redacting everything and covering everything up. That's new. That's fresh. But it is interesting to see what piece of evidence they decide not to redact, what piece of evidence they decide to blast around to the world. And that piece of evidence is actually the excuse and reason why Donald Trump should be assassinated, and then a $150,000 bribe for anybody who finishes the job. This is disgusting. This is absolutely despicable, especially if you take law enforcement at their word that they don't usually like to put this stuff out there because it will inspire copycats. Well, then, if that's the case, then why in fact would you put this out there unless you are trying to inspire copycats? Now, there is more to this letter, but they won't let us see it. They will regurgitate portions of the letter for us that they've screened. But that's why I have questions about the actual validity of this letter. Take a look at the Justice Department filing here. They have all these different items to explain why this guy should be kept behind bars. And then they get to item number 18. We'll read it together. On September 18th, 2024, law enforcement was contacted by a civilian witness who said that Routh had dropped off a box at his residence several months prior. So this was 3 days after the assassination attempt, early last week. A witness called the Justice Department and said, hey, that guy you just arrested for the Trump assassination thing in Florida, he dropped a box off at my house. After learning of the September 15th incident in Trump International, the witness opened the box. That's kind of weird, isn't it? So somebody drops off a box at your house and you just hang on to it for months and you never look to see what's inside it. I mean, I don't know. I guess if it's a friend of mine and they asked me to hold on to it and they asked me not to look in it, maybe I would respect their privacy and not look in it. But just understand, this is the guy who's dropping off the box. This is the guy, and this is the guy who claims he's gone to Ukraine and has been part of the war effort and is clearly, sort of an unhinged freak. So really, you're not going to take a look in that box after this guy comes by and drops it off for your safekeeping? All right, fine, whatever. Maybe you thought it was wired. Maybe you thought it was going to be a bomb. Although after he's arrested for an attempted assassination of Donald Trump, maybe that's when you shouldn't open the box. Maybe that's when you call in the bomb squad. That said, we go back to the story that the DOJ put in this filing. This is a court affidavit. The witness stated the box contained ammunition, a metal pipe, miscellaneous building materials, tools, 4 phones, various letters. One handwritten letter addressed to the world stated, among other things, quote, this was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I failed you. I tried my best and gave it all the gumption I could muster. It is up to you now to finish the job, and I will offer $150,000 to whomever can complete the job. The witness took a photograph of the first page of the handwritten letter as shown below. So there's a picture of the handwritten letter. You just saw it on the previous screen as well. Now, the DOJ filing goes on to say the handwritten letter above goes on to state in part, he, the former president, ended relations with Iran like a child, and now the Middle East was unraveling. And then they move on to other pieces of evidence and they leave the letter completely. All right, now, a couple things here that are weird. First of all, there's nowhere in it, we don't see what the second page says, only what the DOJ wants us to know what the second page said. But nowhere in here, if you notice the wording of this court filing, nowhere in here does the Justice Department state for the record in court that they have independently verified the validity of this letter. Did you notice that? Now, they may have, but they didn't state that to the court. All they stated to the court was a witness claims this letter was from Routh, which is not the same thing as having it. Now, for all we know, this was, in fact, a handwritten letter from the assassin. But if you're going to include it in a court filing, shouldn't you have independent verification that it is, in fact, what it claims to be? And isn't it interesting that this one line item, he, the former president, ended relations with Iran like a child, and now the Middle East has unraveled. Why did the Justice Department pull that one line from the second page of the letter and put that in their court filing? How does that aid their argument that he should be kept behind bars? I mean, if anything, isn't the Justice Department pulling, in fact, another motive to murder Donald Trump? I mean, if you're angry about what's going on in the Middle East and you're looking who to blame for what's going on, and let's face it, there are very many violent people out there who are angry about the Middle East. You know, the people who live in Rashida Tlaib's district. Or for that matter, the people over in Lebanon who are getting pagers exploded in their front pockets right now. There are very angry terrorists around the world who are pissed off about what's happening in the Middle East. And the Justice Department decides to pull one sentence out of this alleged letter from the alleged attempted assassin And they blasted around the world, basically saying, hey, guys, if you're angry about the Middle East, it's Trump's fault. What in the hell is the Justice Department doing here? There is no legal reason why that line in particular needed to be pulled out of this assassin's letter and put in this court filing. And I want to remind you, this is the picture of the letter. Look at the end of this. The witness took a photograph of the first page of the handwritten letter as shown below. That's the picture from the witness. There are no pictures from anyone from the Justice Department of this letter. Why not? Why are we relying on the witness's picture of the letter? And why didn't the Justice Department, if they're going to put part of the letter in the record, why didn't they put the entire letter in the record? And where in here, this entire narrative in this legal filing about this letter is the Justice Department claims this letter was in a box dropped off by the would-be assassin months before the assassination attempt. The witness called the Justice Department and, hey, claimed this guy dropped it off. And then here's the letter that this guy claims was in the box that was claimed to have been dropped off by the attempted assassin. Nowhere in the Justice Department's legal filing is there any validity or verification that this letter is in fact what this witness claims that it is. So it could be a fraud. We don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying, why in the hell are we seeing it? Why in the hell are we hearing about it? The Justice Department in this filing never says this assassin wrote this letter and this is his letter. They can't say that. If they could say that, they would say that. Instead, what they said was a witness claims that this guy wrote this letter and left it in the box. This stinks to high heaven, to the highest heaven. What the hell are they doing? Furthermore, let's not forget, here's this guy again. He's offering $150,000 to people to finish the job, he says. By the way, I would think that the price on a would-be president's head and former president's head would be a little higher than that, but fine. $150,000 is what he's got. Let's go with $150,000. Except there's this. Just 2 years ago, when he was trying to raise money to go to Ukraine to fight the Ukraine war effort on behalf of the Ukrainians, in his Newsweek interview, he said this.
When I call back home and say, hey, I need $5 so I can, put enough money together to get a vest for a Ukrainian, and I get no response, I'm like, I'm not sure that the world is as wonderful as I once thought it was. I had thought that everyone would respond, very generously and unselfishly, and you don't have to come. But if I ask for $5 to buy a vest to save a Ukrainian life, it seems like that would be a no-brainer. But I increasingly get more disappointed in humanity, and I'm beginning to question whether or not we're going to end up on the right side of this equation.
All right. Now, first of all, obviously, this guy 2 years ago looks like a freaking hobo, right? And he's living on the streets of Gavin Newsom's California, or Kamala Harris's San Francisco, for that matter. He looks like he's been rejected by Hunter Biden's crack dealer because he can't come up with the $20 for his next hit. Here he is begging literally for $5 from family members, and he's getting rejected. But now suddenly 2 years later, he's got $150,000. How? Where? He was living in Hawaii before he flew to Florida for the assassination attempt. Who paid for that airline ticket? Where did he get his gun? He didn't have it on the plane with him. So somewhere when he arrived from Hawaii, he bought an AK-47 to assassinate Donald Trump. Where'd that money come from? I mean, while the Justice Department is putting together their filings for this case, maybe they could answer a couple of those questions instead of answering the one question that nobody's asking, which is, why do you think Donald Trump should get a bullet in the head? Because that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're putting together their own manifesto, for that matter. And it's disgusting. Am I the only one that's sort of overreacting to this? Because I think it's wrong. Again, love the transparency, but why is it that it's only 7 days later and you're putting this out here basically doubling down and giving people more reason to try to act out and do something disgusting and irresponsible and unconstitutional and treasonous by putting a bullet in Donald Trump's head? Why? Where are the grown-ups at the Justice Department to say, hey, guys, maybe we shouldn't do this? Or, by the way, how many times have they filed things with redacted information? It's like, maybe they could just keep this within the court. maybe they could say, this is a pretty sensitive thing. So we want to make this filing, but let's redact this thing about, giving the rationale why Donald Trump should be assassinated. Nope, nope. At Joe Biden's Justice Department, they want the whole world to know all the reasons why Donald Trump should be murdered. That's a hell of a new legal standard going on over at the Justice Department. A very brand new legal standard. One that, I don't know, if you didn't know any better, could possibly be interpreted in such a way to think that they can't wait for the next try.